Good morning, fourth graders. We are going to work today on a concept that many of you are familiar with. We're just going to go a little deeper with it. Eventually, we are going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide with decimals. Many of you have asked questions about this, so we are going to go through the beginning part in today's lesson. So as you can see, we are doing 3.1 decimals and place value. Feel free to pause this video at any time when you need to write things down. The first thing I want to go through with you is the vocabulary of the word decimal. And with the deci, we see that it's going to be parts of tens. So we could be talking about 10 hundredths, we could be talking about 10 tenths, but these are pieces of tens, and decimals are wonderful because they do work in tens, just like the metric system. So I just want to connect this idea that we have with decimals with our money system, because most kids can picture a dollar, can picture 10 dimes, and can also picture 100 pennies. And I have some of those examples here. So if we are talking about one whole, and I'm also going to lay out a dollar. By now, all of you know that if I wanted to break this dollar into dimes, I would need 10 dimes. So it makes sense that one whole equals 10 tenths. It's the same as one whole equals one dime. One whole, get the dollar back, also is equal to 100 hundredths. So if I were to break this dollar into hundredths, I would then need 100 total pennies. I prefer the lightweight dollar, but sometimes you want those pennies. So 1/10, which is written like this, we'll get to that a little bit more later, is also equal to 10 hundredths. So that is like taking a tenth of a tenth. And so that is like taking a dime and breaking it into 10 pennies. Makes sense. These two are equal. If you walk into a store and something's a dime and you lay 10 pennies up there, you laid 10 hundredths instead of 1/10 on the table. 2 ones and 5 tenths is the same as writing 2.5, or I could read this as 25 tenths. So if you picture it with money, I would do 2 $1 bills and 5 dimes. I also could break these $1 bills into dimes and do 10 for $1, 10 for the other dollar, and then 5. So that would be a total of 25 dimes. A lot of kids have trouble with converting these, and I just want you to try to connect it with your ideas of money. So here's a question for you. How would you write 20 hundredths using tenths? Well, that's the same as writing 20 pennies. So if you were to write 20 hundredths, which would be 0.20, you can drop that 0 and it is the same as 2 dimes. One thing I taught my last class, and they never forgot it, and they even told a sub one time, it's the cows come home zeros. The neat thing about our number system is if I say have the number 2, that's a pretty easy number, it won't matter to you if I write 100, 1,000 zeros before the number 2. It's still 2. If I write 2.0, it's still equal to 2. If I write 2.00, it's still equal to 2. If I write 2.000, it's still equal to 2. The neat thing about our number system is the numbers that come before that whole number are what I call cows come home zeros. You can add those zeros till the cows come home, and believe me, I'm from Iowa, the cows never come home when they get out. If they come after the 0, same thing. This is still like $2. If you add zeros and zeros and zeros, it's still $2. I call it cows come home zeros because the cows never come home. You can keep adding them if you want. And that's important later when we get into especially subtracting decimals. I want you to take a minute right now, and I want you to copy down the place value. If you look up on my wall above the windows, you are going to see the place values up above the window. And those are there for your reference, but you really need to know the place value. And we're going to just start with the ones. You learned this back in first and second grade: ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. The place values after this decimal point go tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, and then it would go on really till the cows come home with the place values, just as you see on the other side. So you can kind of see how these match, and they go in this order on either side of that decimal. How we read it is this decimal point, we say and. So if we want to say 1 and 2/10, we would do 1.2 or 1 and 2/10. A lot of kids will not really know how to say the number correctly. And I always put this down so that they realize how you do it. So you need to read the number that's before the decimal first, then say the word and when you get to the decimal, and then read the number after the decimal as if there isn't a decimal, and say the place value of the last digit you see. So if I have 1 and then the decimal point 321, I would say 1 and 321 thousandths, because the last digit is in the thousandths place. You can read this as 1,321 thousandths if you want. You can convert this in any way you wish. You just need to make sure that the value doesn't change. So for instance, if I have 0.1, 1/10, I have 1 dime. That is 1/10. If I add a cows come home 0 after that, and I say this is 10 hundredths, technically speaking, that would be 10 of these. But if I were to say, oh, that's a dime, that's 10 cents, it's the same value. I haven't changed the value at all, whether I'm talking about 10 pennies or 1 dime. The biggest issue with today's lesson is going to be converting these, like 1 whole is 10/10, and how to read these in different ways. Please look back in examples 1 through 3 in your book. And there's some great pictures as well. I just want to flash that up here. If you look at a square that's divided as 1 whole, notice that each strip is 10 little squares. So this red highlighted section is equal to 1/10 of that whole square. And this little guy, this little green guy, is 1/100th. Now to picture 1/1000th, you would have to take this little green guy and cut him into 10 pieces. So it would be just a little sliver of that amount. And when we're talking money, 1/1000th, that would be 1/10 of a penny. So you can see that the word decimal, getting back to the beginning of the lesson, is we're taking 1/10 of the previous number. Just like on our place value for the actual numbers that we're used to using, 10 ones is 110, 10 tens is 100, 10 hundreds is 1,000. We have a wonderful numerical system that works in a very logical way. If you have any trouble with today's lesson, please let me know. But do go back to the first couple of pages of the lesson and read through it if there's any confusion at all.